Hey, welcome to Humpday Hangout presented by Fire Engineering. We're here to talk about all things training today. We've got quite a distinguished panel, and we're going to kind of jump right into it. Everybody's got busy schedules, and things have been going crazy here the last week for training business. Obviously, we're starting to open up a little bit, and we got the Godfather here who's going to tell us about the what we came back with after the Fdic cancellation of what he's got planned, because I'm very interested to hear what's going on there, Chief Halton. So please enlighten all of us.
Well, great. So thank you for having me. Yes, Fdic was postponed for 2020. So if you were scheduled to present, we're still going to hold you over for 2021. So you didn't lose your slot. We're also going to be opening up some new slots. And so if you do want to present, just send me an email with the description of your class. I've already gotten a few folks have sent them to us, and we'll run those by the board, and good luck. So that's what's happening with Fdic. The United Fire Conference, what we've done there is we've got some great folks that we invited to do this with us, the I-Chiefs, the Women in Fire, the Instructor Society, Black Professionals, the Leadership Institute that Carl Holmes used to do, NFFF, just the National Volunteer Firefighters, so huge group of folks. And basically it's just a very small, it's not a huge conference. It's just going to have 57 classes. 7 of those are going to be panels. So there'll be 7 time frames of classes. And so there'll be a panel in each time frame. And basically what it is, it's just going to be an opportunity for networking, an opportunity for the exhibitors to reconnect with the fire service, and the fire service to reconnect with itself in a classroom setting. It's all classrooms, no hot. Great classroom lineup so far. We're building it as I speak, so stand by. Many of you will be getting invitations to speak, so we're building it incrementally with a collaborative effort of all those groups. The proceeds are going to be split from the attendee revenue 50-50 with the National Fallen Firefighters and the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And everybody knows what the National Fallen Firefighters do with the Widows and Orphans funds and the scholarship funds and the other things that they do, the memorials that they do around the country. But Tunnels to Towers, if you don't know, that's the Stephen Stiller Foundation. It's run by his brother Frank, and they pay off the mortgages of fallen police officers and firefighters and military people. So it's a great foundation. So those folks are going to split half the revenue money, which is really cool. It's very affordable, only $200 for 3 days, and that gives you access to the exhibit floor too. If you just want to come and see the exhibit floor, that's $25. So it's going to be a great opportunity, and it's basically, we're going to talk about recent events, lessons learned, whether it had to do with COVID or the current social unrest, and then mostly it's going to be firefighting. The panels will deal with that stuff. But the rest of it's going to be, real firefighting. It's going to be these guys that you're looking at here. We're going to talk about firefighting and all its aspects. And obviously there'll be a couple of folks talking about leadership and stuff like that. But a great lineup. 8 classes per session, I believe, and one of them is a panel. So it's a total of 56 classes. And really love to have as many of you there that we can possibly get there. It should be a wonderful time. Indianapolis, September 22nd through the 24th. And there's going to be a unity celebration party. There's going to be the union's talking about doing a welcome to Indy thing on Monday night. There'll be all kinds of stuff going on, just like it always happens at Fdic, kind of, the same kind of celebratory nature. But it's just a chance to reconnect and get back to normal and kick around and share some thoughts and think about how we want to really move forward and move on and get back to some semblance of normalcy and reconnect with the primary functions of the mission. So that's why it's called the United Fire Conference. The chiefs will be there, the WIN will be there, every interest group, and it's okay to have interest groups that exist in the fire service has been invited, and so far they're all coming. So and we hope to see you all there.
Chief, did I miss it? Did you say when's registration going to open for that?
It's open now, I believe.
Oh, okay.
The website's just unitedfireconference.com, and we hope to see you there. And I'd like to get my hands on the wise guy who changed my name on here. So I was just kidding.
Hey,
be,
I'm
that would be
betting it's
me.
the guy in the center.
That would be me. But so it's
Guy
about
in the
training,
center
right?
would be my guess.
Again, we're talking about training today. And classroom training is really important. It's where we get to share ideas, we get to throw stuff around. Not everything fits everywhere, and that's really important. But sometimes some piece of it fits, right? Like what Tony can do in DC is radically different than what Sam might be able to get away with, in Wichita. But parts of it they can, you know what I mean? And so manpower is different. Sometimes um, the normative behaviors and the supplies and the resources might be typed differently, but so there's always stuff that you can learn from, and you can learn from everybody. I don't care who the person is. Everybody's got something to share that you don't know. I think Will Rogers said it best. He said, we're all ignorant, just different subjects. So it'll be really fun. It'll be really great. And I hope to see you all there. And if you haven't gotten your invitation, and just stand by, because we're going through them every day. Diane gets a new, group that we send out. So we're building it day by day.
I bet you Diane and Ginger are
Oh yeah, they're real
working
happy
their
with
fingers to the bone.
Yeah, that's what we needed. That's what we needed, Halton. Another conference to work on. Oh yeah,
Come back and go, Ginger, Diane, I have this great idea.
I'm their favorite guy right now.
I bet you are. So hey, Sammy kind of helped us.
They call me Jethro Bodine.
So Sammy kind of helped us along the way. Sammy's like the igniter for all these ideas, and we take about half of it and go on with it. But we kind of want to talk. We're going to go around the panel and kind of talk about where we think training is going to be. I don't think at the beginning of this, when Chief Halton asked the International Society of Fire Service Instructors and Traditions Training team together, we're at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were trying not to harp on it too much. I think for the first show we talked about it for a good 10 or 15 minutes, but I don't think any of us thought it was going to last this long and how it's going to play out. So I guess the question I put out to the group was, where do we actually think training is going to go, is headed, how we're going to start doing that, and how we're going to keep up the experience level for our firefighters. So Scott, I know that you can't turn your video on, but I was going to start with you, and so you can go ahead with the rest of your day. But what in your organization, which is a huge organization, where do you see the training going with all this pandemic stuff?
Can you hear me, Eric?
Yeah, we got you, Scott.
I can hear you now, bud.
All right. Hey, man, sorry about that. Trying to stay in the lane here. So, I think we've been trying to decentralize training for a long time, just to keep out of service time at a minimum. So this really hasn't affected us, smaller groups, obviously, but I think as long as our firemanship doesn't change, our basic skill set has always been the most important. And Chief Halton said, you can always learn something from somebody. So, we put out and Chief Schultz is very aware of this as well, but we put out what we call competencies. And I think it's the best thing we've ever done. Basically what that is, it's a skill sheet. All members are notified of what, said skills would be at the end of the year, and that could be, BEIS. And here's the critical points we're looking for, things that'll kill you. And we time test it with, some more aggressive companies, and we find a happy medium. And it's not punitive. It creates competition among the crews and among the companies. But we do videos, we do skill sheets, and come fall, the units come up in small groups, and they run through those skills, and it might be 4 of them. So your out of service time is literally maybe 2 hours, and your groups are small because they're operating within your company at the training division or wherever they have to do it. And the time is the stress factor. We can't always add stress when we can't always do the coup de grace or the drilling at the speed of flashover at Fdic. We can't always have all those resources. So, time, the stopwatch creates that stress, and it works really well. We changed it. We changed the skill sets up. Lines over ladders. We even do an EMS component. We get backboarding, getting someone out of a car, extrication. The sky's the limit. We try to keep it to the basic skill sets. I think, as we all would agree, that's what's important. That's where we have our line of duty deaths. That's where we lose people, is just forgetting those basic skills. So for us, that's worked really well. And luckily we were ahead of the game. Not that we knew it was coming, but the competencies are a perfect answer to this pandemic, because again, small groups, limited out of service time, limited resources.
So Scott, you're saying Fairfax was moving towards this ahead of all this?
Yeah, not because not for those reasons necessarily, but I think what we realized early on, I'm sure everybody has, is that to keep adults learning and learning at their pace and with their input, and you got to keep it short and sweet. You want them to walk away from the training ground happy. You want them to succeed. And so we give them all the information. That was the big deal. We hand them, here's what we're going to test you on, quote unquote. You're not testing anyone. I mean, you are, but not punitive. But they have all the information. If they fail to utilize that and come up there cold, which did happen the first time we did this, the numbers were, you had your special service guys and girls that are supposed to be the creme de la creme, and they were unable to force a door in 2 minutes, and it was eye-opening. But at the end of the day, since we've been doing it, everybody knows now, where the standard lies. And like I said, it creates competition. It's still done safely, but it does create some competition amongst those companies that strive, they're full of pride and esprit de corps, and strive to be the best in the battalion or the county for that matter. So yeah.
So Scott, you said that you guys drill on like the basics, the fundamentals. What are 3 or 4 of the key things that you drill on that you think we should be like looking at all the time?
Well, Chief, it's just my opinion, of course, but I think you look at those skills that are emergent. The ones that you don't have time to do on the job training, on fire ground. So I'm not necessarily worried about my the individual riding ladder truck if he or she is not up to par on setting up lights, or tightening a screw right or left at some point. In my opinion, we focus on the forcible entry, the primary search, and estimating the stretch, and ladder placement. That would be just right off the top of my head, 4 key things that we focus on. And that, and as those skills start off very basic, and then, for this competency training, we try to ramp them up. So, you're not just stretching a line in a parking lot, you're stretching it to, the burn building with parked cars and bushes and this and that and the other. And, again, you're on a timer. So that's where people start to, fidget a little bit. If they haven't been on their A game all year, or, the previous 8 months practicing, and that falls on the officer. That's a leader's job. Then, it shows.
No, I'll take a shot. That's awesome stuff, and you can't wait for the fire, right? You can't wait for that next run to happen, to train on. That's where we get a lot of our training. We're not right now during the pandemic. We're not sending companies down to our academy. I was fortunate enough to be able to grab a couple of companies and take them down there. And really, what I wanted to do, because I haven't done this with the battalion that I'm assigned to, seeing how they can stretch a line or how long it's going to take for them to get into service, I did just that. Right? We said go, and the basics right now with the engines, they're laying a line from a hydrant. They get to the building, the burn building, they'll stretch a line. There's no live fire, and because how much that requires for resources we can't get right now. there's no live fire, but they have to get a line in place, stretch down a hallway, flow in water, and knock down the simulated fire, and then go to the window to vent. Again, one company, right? 4 people, so we're not getting a lot of people together. That we might compromise some of that social distancing. So it's good. And like you said, the timer is the only really way we can add some stress to their life, because they all know the burn building, they all know the layout of it, they all know their equipment. So we add that time element. Now I can see this blossoming into, like you said, kind of a company versus company, and maybe that would then require that company officer to step up his game. I just had a member be transferred out, and he was replaced by someone we don't really know, right? A new officer, hasn't had a company of his own, so now's his chance to kind of see if he can keep the expectations up, and he can match other companies in the battalion. No, I think that's a great idea. Now, some of our troubles are, as we spend a lot of our time before the pandemic, we spent a lot of time on EMS training, and it's kind of up to the company officer back in the company, right back in the firehouse, to work on fire training. Hopefully, because we've seen some of that, where they're not meeting expectations out in the field, we can see, hey, we need to focus some of this stuff on our training. So I really like. I've kind of been, admiring from afar what you guys are doing with the OAR rotations, and your basics in Fairfax. And I think that's something that we should be able to do in my job and in other places too. That company, right? That training with the company is really the vital. It's great we can get a class together of different people, but if we can get that company and then solidify that company, that's the best stuff.
Sorry, I'm muted now. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, Kraut. I appreciate it. I was muted when Tony jumped on, but greatly appreciate it. So, Sammy, we kind of briefly talked about this, kind of stuff where how you think we're going to be doing training. I think Scott, obviously Fairfax was on that track to begin with, just due to their huge geographic area of 500 square miles and trying to keep companies in service. Obviously, that county does nothing to get busier and busier each day. So, I understand what they're doing, but I would say, what are we doing in Wichita? Where do you think the training division's taking the training from now on, and how we're gonna keep the guys with that experience that don't have it now? If that makes sense. It sounds like a Sammy question.
Yeah, I think we're actually, as a fire service, I think we could be in jeopardy if we're not careful in how we move forward with training. Just like a lot of businesses have discovered that there's a lot of value to keeping people at home and having meetings virtually, with the media outlets available to us now, we have the ability to watch webinars, we have the ability to watch YouTube fire videos and talk about them. But the problem is that's kind of that explicit knowledge, and getting guys to actually be able to retain it and apply it when they start to go into those stress levels.
Beach, brother Hittle.
It's going to be something that's very difficult. And, Chief Schultz and Chief Riley discussed this last night on the webinar. He must have got that out of the trunk of his Mustang.
We're trying to be serious here. Sammy's on a roll, man.
Yeah, beautiful. But no, like it was discussed on the webinar last night, you're going to have to take advantage of what you've done at that fire. If that means restretching the line because it was done improperly, then reload the line, put it back on the engine, and restretch it at that exact fire, and talk about why you should have done it differently, and let them see the rationale behind your statements that, okay, see how when we did this, we got that. I know it's probably not popular in a lot of departments, but I've made guys go back up on the roof after a cut, explain to them what we were trying to accomplish, and make them actually cut another hole in that house. Again, I can understand where some people would balk at that, but the experience that we're trying to give them and let them see, okay, on this side I did this and it resulted in that. And then I came over here and I did it this way, and my results were more favorable. I had a chief ask me a long time ago. He said, Sam, do you think those books really help you? And I said, no, I don't think that they really help me when I go to a fire. I think they help me evaluate the fire more effectively. Because a lot of times when you read literature or do something along those lines after the fire, when you actually take time to reflect on it, then you can say, okay, that's what they were talking about, and that's the benefit that they were trying to allude to. And I guess today's quote Chief Bobby Halton Day, but he said it best. I'm going to read it because I don't want to mess it up. Experience without reflection and evaluation is just interesting.
It's exactly that, Sam. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's hysterical. But but Larry, Larry and I have had this conversation before. Going to fires is one thing. Thinking about them, and I don't mean you got to nitpick every little thing, but running them through in your head and then maybe writing some things down or maybe capturing some things or then drilling on it, like Scott said, drilling on some of those things that you found to be, maybe we're a little slow getting that backup line. Maybe we're a little slow getting the search done. Maybe we jumped ahead, of the fire, and it didn't get us this time, but next time it might not turn out as well. I think that's great stuff. And I think I think that's what that's what we're doing here. That's what we do. That's what we do at all these conferences. We don't, the good firefighters don't throw stones at other people or call them stupid. They try to figure out why it made sense to them at the time and what they would do, in a similar fashion and why, and what they would do differently. And I really believe that. I mean, I really do. And okay, the shirt was to one up my buddy Tony. Tony's got a great Grateful Dead tribute shirt on. So I had this shirt here. I was going to tell you guys, this shirt is 50 years old. A person made this for me 50 years ago. It was a birthday present 50 years ago, and it still fits, baby. Of course, the sleeves I had to get rid of because the guns. The guns.
So Sammy said something, and before I click over to Larry and get Larry chime in. So I mean, as when I was a training officer, the companies would always say, hey, what are we going to do for training? What are we going to do for training? What's the training academy going to do? What's the department going to do? And I think now, listening to Sammy talk, I think now the emphasis kind of now goes back that we're going to have to put this all on the company officer. Is that, Sammy, do you kind of agree with that one? Or, whoa, I got a wave hand here.
I think
not all of it.
I think the training division is very much aware of SOP adjustments that require training as part of, you have to have training, you have to have discipline, you have to have it written for something to become effective within your organization. But I think they're very much aware of those problems. I think the company officer should be very much aware of the deficiencies within that company. And it shouldn't be hard to find things to train on. If we really subscribe to the fact that we don't run perfect fires, and we evaluate where we could have done things better or where we're lacking the understanding in the tactic we employed, then we should have plenty of training to work on throughout the month.
But I mean, you look at the group here who've all ridden right front seats of fire trucks and been in charge of people. But I mean, what about the people that aren't that type A personality? I mean, it is going to always depend on the department to provide that training rather than the company officer. So Bobby, you were waving your hand. So what?
Yeah, I think that training's on all of us. I don't care where you are in the system. You know what I mean? Like, when you look at the folks that are doing the hands-on training or the classroom training at FDIC or other places, it's all of us. I don't care if you're, especially today, like, I'm blessed to be able to hang out with a lot of young firefighters here in Tulsa and at the local volunteer places and the local Owasso and these local communities that I get to go hang out with. And man, everybody's got like skill sets that are just amazing. And so when it's like the problem for us, I believe the folks that really want to be proficient at this mission is there's just not enough time. I mean, you know, Scott Kleinhenst, am I getting his name wrong or right? Sammy, how do you say Scotty's last name correctly?
Yeah, I can't spell it either.
The big guy with the big guns, Kleinschmidt.
Kleinschmidt, right.
That's what Kleinschmidt means in German. Big guy, big guns.
Big dude with big guns. Okay, Schultz. And Schultz is German, so that's a fact. So
I thought his last name was Scott and his first name was Angry.
Exactly. But man, you sit through that guy's all about saws class, there's not 5 minutes you don't learn something or improve somewhere. And every job, every crew has people that have that kind of depth, but it's just on stuff that you know you don't think about. Like there's TIC people, there's medical people, there's SCBA people. Like I mean, where do you end? I mean, even just I saw Clay McGee, a young kid who was on Twitter. He got some new hand tools the other day and threw them up on his site. And he was showing how he was going to prep them once he got them, what he was, how he was going to tape them, how he was going to, modify them, sharpen them to get them to where he wanted them. Right. I'm like, God bless you, man. I remember when people used to weld the little camshafts. Remember that, Larry? We used to yell those little. We used to put so we could use them for turning things on and off. Remember that?
He's in his coughing fit.
Oh, no. I'm acknowledging.
Okay, Larry, so let's start. Sammy's ready for you to talk now because the text, of course, the secret text chain that's going on. But so, I mean, we talked about where do you think this training is going to go? I mean, obviously, you're the leader of that. And then how are we going to get people the experience they need to do this stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll kind of tie up or jump on a little bit of what everybody else has said. I think what Sammy started off with was a brilliant point, and that is don't jump to conclusions on cause and causation. And the fire department's really good about that. In other words, we see errors on the fire ground, and we automatically assume people are willfully violating policies. Officers are incapable. People don't have enough experience, and I don't think that's the case. In fact, I'm not sure that can be further from the truth. So we've shared a lot. We talked about this on our last month's show when we said that the fire ground is dynamic, fast moving, complex, ever changing. We also talked about this affinity for the fire department for whatever reason, and I'm speaking as a service as a whole, to place all our emphasis on explicit learning. And I get it. It's easy. It's cheap, right? You read a book, you sit in front of a computer, you learn something. All at the expense of the implicit or the intuitive decision making that's needed to come with it. So, when Chief Halton was just talking about, things that needed to go better or things we should improve on. When Sammy was talking about never settling to walk away from a tactical issue that didn't go well, I think this is where training's going, or at least where it needs to go. Last night, Ricky, you and I were talking, and I made a statement that if every officer, every chief officer would be committed, no matter what run they go on today, to spend 5 minutes on the scene, looking at the building, talking about the building, the different features about it. How would you cut a roof? How would you estimate a stretch? What are the forcible entry challenges? Going through all those things that you would exponentially increase the performance level of your company. The issue I would say is that needs to take place. I guess, let me try to end it this way. The value of going to fire engineering and taking a Mike Champo truck class is that, along with the instruction, when I get up there and I do something, if I've made an error, if I didn't do it right, I have Sam Hittle, I have Roger Steger, I have Danny Doyle, I have Mike Champo there. They're the experts. They're the ones with the experience, and they have the ability to then explain what I need this, or maybe they help me see what I didn't see, or help me explain processes that I just didn't know, as opposed to thinking that I just don't know how to cut a hole in the roof. So I think training in the future needs to be one of those where there is some level of talk through, where we're talking about why we made the decision we did, what we were thinking, what we were seeing, and then having some level of expertise there to be able to help me out in seeing what I missed and didn't think through.
Well, so can I go with that? And so going back to Scott's stuff about the rotations that they're doing, the competencies, right? There has to be a basic competency. So the training division is going to be responsible for right, with the administration. They'll establish kind of our expectations, and then they need to teach our people, right, the basics. And then it's up to the company officer then to kind of refine that stuff and make sure that his company is meeting that. So and I think I earlier when Chief Halton was waving his hands and saying that there was a comment like, is it going to be the company officer's responsibility? There has to be the training division has to be there to provide the basics, and we're still going to need that. And then, like Schultz was saying, we can get our SMEs cutting roofs, bring that person in and have them work with our companies so they have that additional knowledge so that they can apply it. So I agree. It's not going to be on the company officer. However, we all know that company training is really good, really important. But the training division is going to have a responsibility, absolutely. So it's not they're not out of it. They're going to establish those basics and our expectations, and then it's up to the company to refine and improve on that.
I think the only thing I would add, Tony, is really most organizations are not staffing their training academies appropriately, and with so much hiring and retention challenges, everything else, it's a big lift for the training academy. Don't underestimate the value that 3 or 4 people in a company have to be able to impromptu just engage in the discussion.
Sorry, having trouble with the unmute button. But so, I mean, I guess the thing that I was trying to get to, that when I talk about the officer, Chief Halton's waving his hand and everything, is that just, I guess, the value of that company officer. In my career as a firefighter, I always tried to gravitate to that good company officer. So I meant, hey, if I'm the Wichita Fire Department, I want to gravitate to Rescue 1 or Rescue 2, because I know the captains, which are Scott and Sammy here, are those people that know more than I do, and they're going to teach me something and make me a better firefighter. So I guess I probably, as usual, as Larry will tell you, that I've phrased the question wrong. And how important that company officer is to all this training. I mean, I never could underestimate. I mean, I took a demotion one time in Fairfax to go work with Lieutenant Whelan, just so I could learn from him. So, to make my craft better. So, and I read tons of books like Sammy did. I mean, my books used smaller words than Sammy's books have, but I read those books and wanted to be that good firefighter, but I depended on that company officer to give me that day-to-day, feedback, which we don't get more or less from a training academy. We get that through the OR sessions that Scott was talking about. That's only maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. And, you're doing the set schedule by the department. But, when we talked about last night, Chief Schultz, is that, every time we go out on that run, the Washington, D.C. Fire Department, Chief Carroll, and, that is probably one of the premier departments that every time they go out on the run, it's a training ground. I mean, every run is you're identifying hydrants, laying out, knowing your street addresses, knowing your buildings. Those first couple companies are stretching lines, throwing ground ladders. So that's that part of that company officer accepts that, and is not lackadaisical officer, just with the effect it's going to have on the firefighter. So it's riding in the back. Go ahead, boss.
So everybody's made great points, and I think that Larry said a really important thing, and he said that, you know, we look at what folks did, and one of the things I always try to raise in all these conversations is folks on the fire ground, cops, airline pilots, everybody who's responsible for other people's lives and safety. When we decide to do something, we believe it's going to work, or we wouldn't do it. No one in our business, and take a couple of crazy people out of the equation, but you know, but no one in our business goes out to intentionally hurt anybody, you know, whether it's a citizen or a firefighter. We all believe it's going to work. It's when it doesn't, we're surprised, right? Because of that. The other thing that I think is, it's called the local rationality principle. In other words, locally, with the information you had at the time, locally for you, it made great sense. Now, the next day in hindsight, after the building has collapsed or something terrible happened, everybody goes, oh, how come they couldn't see this coming? Well, they couldn't. And so, you know, or they didn't. So that didn't factor into their decision-making process. So you got to take the decision at the time based upon the information they had, what they were trying to achieve, but more, and even more interestingly enough, on their previous experiences and on their training. And that's where what Scott said, and everyone else in various ways earlier, the reason we train so much, and we should train every day as often as possible, is because the more we refine that, the more readily we access that stuff on the fire ground when we need it. Like just firing up a rotary saw. Well, there's a reaction to that. And if, you know, and doing it on a roof at 2 o'clock in the morning in the rain is not the time to figure out, you know, fully bunkered up in all your gear, is not the time to figure out what that's going to feel like. You know, the warthog starts going and you lift it up, you better be used to that, right? You know, so, and I don't care, you know, there used to be, somebody once said, you know, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who took the law of large numbers, and he said something like, you know, you do something 10,000 times to be an expert. I don't think that's an arbitrary number. I think you could do it 200,000 times and still not be an expert. You should see me on the piano. So but the point is, you know, do it 200,000, do it 300,000 times. Some of the best firefighters I ever met, and I'll throw their names out, Bobby Morris, you know, that guy was on his very last shift with the FDNY after 30 some odd years on the line. He held drill in the morning and he held drill at afternoon, and he participated as hard and as long as everybody else, and he was totally into it because that's got to be your mindset. You know, it's like when you're in your shop or you're cutting your lawn or you're sharpening the blades for your mower. You don't do it casually. You do it with purpose, and that's the difference. You know, everybody talks about, are we professionals? We're tradesmen, and getting better at your trade, to Sammy's point, is about being a little bit better every day, at every single aspect, whether it's how you treat one another, whether it's how you do roll call, how you communicate, how you handle your hand tools, how you force a door, how you load your hose. You can always be better. I don't care who you are, and or how long you've been doing it, or what you're doing. Ask my wife. So the point being, I think that it's so neat to be with a group like this that just loves the fire service and wants to do better all the time. And I don't care. There's stuff I still don't understand. I'm not good at that's fundamental to our job. And I've been doing this my whole life. And I work at it and I work at it and I work at it. But some stuff just doesn't come to you naturally. For me, it's ropes. I'm the world's worst at knots, and I just suck at it. And maybe that's just, it's in my head that way. But, you know, if I'm going over the side, I ain't tying me off. You are. You know, it's because I'm not, you know, I struggle with it. And I don't mind telling people that I struggle with it. And I've got friends like you guys and the guys from PMI and the guys from, I've got the tower rescue guys who, hey, watch this, Bobby, we'll do this and do this, and then you can lift yourself. I'm like, I watch them, they have me run through it, and for some reason, I'm just not, I'm not your rope guy, and that's okay. I'm good at other stuff. I make a great peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I can run the rehab unit.
Fried bologna, Schultz.
Fried bologna, man. PT 109. Hot meal.
Hey, Scott Kraut wanted to chime on. He was going to talk about his proficiency in getting his helmet straight on his head for pictures. So thanks to Sammy. But Scott Kraut, go ahead, buddy.
I'm gonna picture. Damn, was wearing me out yesterday about that. No, so I just wanted to speak to the point that Chief Halton made, and just be perfectly frank. And I know we've had some of these discussions before, and that was in regards to the, we can always do it better, or we watch someone's video or fire and we say, oh, well, I would have done it this way, and you don't know all the pieces, Sorry, I just walked up like 6 flights of steps. So, we
should do more aerobics there, Kraut.
I know. I ran 5 today, but for some reason it's wearing me out. So in our realm, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this again. But we failed a citizen in 2006, and that was our catalyst. But when it was so easy to say, oh, those guys messed this up, or they failed to do this. And there was mistakes made, no doubt. But the bigger piece was find out why. Why did they choose to do this or that, or not do this or that? And one of the things that was said after the fact was that, well, we thought this one room was going to flash. And come to find out, if you think about it, who can you blame for that? Did the organization fail the individual? Yes. Can you really be upset at a line officer for withdrawing his crew because he or she thought it was going to flash? So what do? You go back and you show them what a flashover looks like. And we purchased, Draeger containers at that point, and we started going down that road. And I think we're a lot better for it because we didn't cast blame. We certainly owned up to it, but we basically, as an organization, and especially as a training division, said, wait a minute, we failed that officer because he or she did not understand what a flashover looks like. So I just think, to that point, it's just mission critical, and Chief Schultz said it too. If you don't, so did Sammy, if you don't own up to your own business and the organization doesn't hold you accountable, and I don't mean punitively, but doesn't say, what went wrong there? What were you thinking? Well, this is what I was thinking. Oh, okay. Well, I can't necessarily blame you for that, but here's what's wrong with that. Again, it's not punitive. We're not beating anybody up, but we're owning up to our mistakes, and we're learning from them, and we're willing to sit at a table and say, yeah, I screwed up, but this is what I thought, and et cetera, et cetera. And then my boss says, hey, you didn't do so well that time. You could have done this better. So I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. But that story to me is, that was the catalyst for a lot of our training changes. And so I like to tell it, even though, it stings, I guess, a little bit, but it's reality.
Hey, Ricky, could I ask Sam a question? This is something him and I have talked about. I think
I don't know, Sam. Can he ask you a question?
Right on what Scott said. So, right, Scott talked about the importance of having somebody there who has a level of expertise, not just explicit expertise, but expertise to the extent that we get it, in trying to direct and teach and instruct people on how to do their job. And you and I have talked about, and I don't want to say this in a way that's going to sound negative, but legitimate experience versus, I don't know, social media experience. And again, I'm not trying to poke a hornet's nest here, but when it comes to instruction and correcting decision making and talking through those things, the source needs to be credible also, right? It's not just anybody who can say you did something wrong. They have to be able in some way to back that up.
I got asked one time. I hope this answers your question, but I got asked one time, "Who is your mentor?" And I replied with, "For what?" And the guy kind of looked at me, and I said, I'm asking for what? Is it for spiritual growth? Is it for command? Is it for forcible entry? Is it for truck work?" Um, that's one of the benefits of the media world that we live in and the access to information that we have. As long as we take time to identify the right people, how many times do we reach out to each other for that information? Or, to bring up Scotty for the third time, he is very dialed in on the rescue stuff. And as I'm working with my company trying to get dialed in, I'll tell him, say, "Hey, I don't have any practical experience with this. Here is my logic, but I'm going to call Scott and get his feedback on it." Does that make sense? And then we'll go out and we'll play with some of the stuff that Scott gave us on feedback, and maybe we'll say, we don't like this, maybe we do, and then we're going to have to employ it and then reevaluate it. And that's one of the problems with the training academy. And I'm not knocking the training academy. I think they have great value, but I can go out to the training academy and cut a hole on an OSB roof where the blank tells me exactly where my saw needs to go in, and I know exactly where those rafters are going to be. But until we get out on real roofs with 6 layers of asphalt and joist changes or rafter changes, then we understand the intent, but we don't really have the skills to be proficient yet.
I mean, I think that when Larry was talking last night, and obviously Sammy, you were listening to that, and Larry was talking about basement fires, and if we have no exterior entrances to the basement, and then hey, you got to make those stairs and you got to go down quick, and then the caveat piece that he put in there says because you don't want to come back up them, because how hard it's going to be to come back up them, and that he says that, and he says it, and everybody should know, one, because Larry said it, it's important to listen to, but I don't think everybody, if you don't have that experience of fighting a basement fire and then having to come back up the stairs, if the fire gets out of control, or you get a burst length or something like that, of how dangerous a position that you're truly in, and understand the danger of that fire, then that's that piece of the experience that we actually have. I mean, there's probably people on the internet that can tell you how hot a basement fire is, but until you experience it, either one in some sort of training environment, and I know Chief Shaw is working diligently with NFPA to try to get us back to some more realistic training, live fire training. But to experience that, or have in a company that runs basement fires, I mean, it's just kind of wondering where we're going to get all this experience from. Well, if in the SAM world, it makes sense.
So that's always the great. And Scott, hey Scott, fire engineering saying goodbye? No, they can't be. Oh, anyway. Oh, Scott, hey, thank you for being on with us, buddy. Anyway,
thanks for having me, Chief. Sorry, I gotta go.
No, man, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. Take care, guys.
To dovetail on what Ricky was just talking about too, and stuff that Steve Shaw's working on, realism is important. I get that, but all of us on this call have been in basement fires, and all of us have been at the top 2 or 3 risers on going up to the 2nd or 3rd floor to a fire that's like on that upper floor, 2nd or 3rd level, and how you get that sudden, the heat changes like dramatically with every riser till you get past that point because the heat's pumping down, and we've all been there, and I guess the issue is I don't know how we'd ever be able to really recreate that with the intensity of those moments without really, I don't know. I mean, it's just until you're really there and you realize all the combined risk that's involved. It's hard. And I get it. Realistic training, I get it. And I get people have problems with live fire, but I'm old enough to remember when 1403 was getting, formulated and what led up to it, right? There's a lot of history there, and it's not good. Men and women died. so that and that standard is the result of people getting killed, and not by anybody's misdeed, albeit with the best of intentions, but it was tragic. And so, I think we need to remember where that standard came from, and yeah, could it be improved? Absolutely. Could we? But I think that the technology is going to help us to get there, right? Without putting people at high risk, and we're evolving on that continuously. You've got these high immersion people that are building suits that we can take up to incredible temperatures. We got AR, VR stuff where they can recreate, the visual side of it. We've got things that can recreate nozzle reaction and all this kind of stuff. So we'll get there at some point in time. Is that in the distant future? Yeah. I don't know how distant, to quote the great American philosopher Yogi Berra, it's hard to predict, especially the future. So I think that, but it's clearly coming. It's clearly something that we're going to have. And so, with what we have today to work with, and they mentioned the Draeger Flashover Simulators, which I think are wonderful. The drilling at the speed of flashover, the stuff that Rick George is doing, the stuff that lots of great firefighters are doing. It's getting more realistic every day, and it's getting better. And I think that I don't know how much the fidelity of the training matters as to the quality. In other words, I don't know that quality is dependent on fidelity, and then the fidelity means basically how accurate it is to the actual real world, right? Because you can put it all together in segments. Does that make sense, Larry? Am I getting that right? I don't know, Ricky.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, I know Ricky's got Tony up in queue, but I kind of spoke a little bit about trying to explain the dangers of going through a first floor in a basement fire, and trying to teach somebody what a gnarly floor feels like. You can talk about it all day long. When a person has an experience, they don't know what they're feeling for.
You're exactly right. As a young man, I practiced making love relentlessly. When I got a chance to do it, I wasn't that good. It's true.
I'm glad he's the editor.
It's true.
If one of us said
kidding. That, I'm not kidding. I mean, who here hasn't?
You up, Tony?
Bill Gustin.
All right, Tony, Carroll, take it away.
Wow. So I got to follow that. So I just want to make sure.
So that was an interesting point, right? And this is a critical cue for all of us. Whenever you're doing training, no matter what kind of training it is, the minute you do a bad joke like that, right, everyone laughs. What that does is it recalibrates people, because half of us were off fishing, some of us were doing whatever. But okay, so real quick teaching lesson, because we're talking about training. I'm married to my wife 47 years. She's got a sister and I won't mention Bev's name, but Bev is an actual witch. She owns a broom. And my wife called me up one day and she said, Bev hurt her ankle. And I'm on the phone and I'm doing my happy dance in the background, but I'm pretending that, I'm so sad for Bev. And I'm just kidding. I'm making this up about Bev. But you can pretend to be sad. You can pretend to be angry. You can pretend to be interested. But when something's funny, you can't fake that. So in your brain, that resets you, because that's higher functioning, right? The back of our brain, the old part, the amygdala, fight or flight, all that stuff is old, it's ancient. But the front of our brain is fairly new and immature. And so, but humor, boom, it brings you right back. So when you're doing some training, the best trainers in the world are the guys that throw in those one-liners and you look at each other like, did he just say that? But it recalibrates you. It gets you back in the moment. So little training moment. Sorry, Tony, it's all yours.
So to build on, let's talk about the basement fire stuff you guys did last night. And one of the things you talked about was going down those basement stairs. Again, you can't wait for a fire to practice that. You have to practice that ahead of time so that they understand, again, the best way to go. And these are going to come from, right, my experience on this, others' experiences, on these things, this is some of the things you want to get in line before you make that push. So you have to make sure that that you've practiced this ahead of time. We can't wait. We can't wait. Just like it kind of goes back, I think, when Scott was talking about the officer said he thought it was going to flash over. Well, that's why they then decided to go put them in the flashover chamber, so that can help them to recognize those signs and symptoms of flashover. The same thing goes for, all right, we're going to make a push down the basement steps. Have we practiced this before? And we have to do that. That's where the training academy can come in, but it also goes then to our company officers to kind of push these issues with the academy. I want my guys to practice this. Let's come up with some kind of a class to get that done, or practice a session to get that done. So, I mean, going forward, yes. I think this has really allowed, at least in my job, it's allowed our companies to work on some training that we weren't before, because we were so focused on EMS things and getting those mods in, and we were sending 7-8 companies down for mod training. Now, because nothing's going on, we've had the opportunity to kind of practice some of these things. Hopefully that can carry on in the future. I'm not sure. Hopefully, again, I'm not tapping the training academies mind right now to see where they're focused and where they're going to head. But those are some of the things. Again, we've identified some issues. Let's make sure we can kind of jump on them and get ahead of these things before they happen on the fire ground.
Sorry, John. Man, my unmuting abilities are really slow today. So yeah, I mean, Bobby. I mean, I guess we're almost at that 1 hour thing. So, Sam, do you got some closing remarks here?
Yeah, I'm going to throw this out. We talked about virtual training, and we certainly don't mean, or my intention was not to diminish the value of that. Again, I think it's somewhere where we can get the basics and start to understand the logic behind some of the tactics. I would say that one other benefit to doing that virtual training, though, is the what's considered the Tetris effect. And basically, if we are calibrating our minds to start thinking about fire, start thinking about tactics instead of thinking about sports, when we go to that fire, we don't have to do such a significant mental shift to get our minds wrapped around the situation in front of us. When we come in the middle of the day, or come in at the beginning of the day, and they know that we are there to respond to alarms, and we start talking about fire over coffee, and we do some basic training in the morning, then the rest of the day, our minds are primed for the fire service.
There's
No, I just a shameless plug, as Chief Halton talked about Indianapolis and the events there. I know we won't be able to do it this year, but I'm excited to hear that 2021 is back on the shelf at FDIC. And here's an opportunity, folks, where I can go and spend my first couple days with hands-on practical training, getting real expertise in the moment on rapid intervention training or whatever topic. And then the next day I can come and listen to Tony Carroll talk about Mayday Monday. I can go put hands on with forcible entry and go sit in a classroom and hear from Sam Hittle. So those are the great opportunities that we have to take both levels of training and try to put it together and gain some real valuable training at that point. So glad to hear we're back on for 2021. Excited to hear about 2020. And thanks as always for having me on.
sorry. Here's the guy I learned my basement fires from, right there. So the Pete that I want to, talking about what Larry just said is that, and what Sammy said is the thing that I wrote down while they were finishing their closing statement is to, hey, yeah, I want you to watch webinars. I want you to, watch fire engineering training minutes. I want you to go to FDIC. I want you to listen to these instructors. But the point that I think that we miss is that when you get back from either that training, or if you're sitting there watching as it accrues, to have a discussion about that training that you just attended. I mean, is it even applicable to your fire department? I mean, what is your response area? What is your staffing levels? Does your department even condone that action? I mean, do they? I mean, I've been to departments where we talk about VES. I'm not putting the I in there. We talk about VES, and they have a stroke. We can't do that. We can't do that. It's just impossible. But that's where I think, once again, how important that company officer is to understand that, hey, our young firefighters today, they're going to watch these webinars. They're going to watch, the social media stuff, and then how they bring it into the department has to be kind of like channeled almost through that company officer, because if they try doing some of this stuff that they learn on an incident scene, the company officer's got to make sure they're doing it so they're not going to get themselves killed. And I'm sure that's an extreme saying, getting killed, but not to mess up the fire ground, I guess would be a better way to put it. But so, Chief Halton.
Well, as always, thank you. Great conversation, Ricky, Sam, Tony, Larry, and Scott. But a lot of great points. And just to follow up with what Ricky said and Larry said, come in every day thinking about fire. Especially on the job. Maybe it doesn't work out so well when you're home with the wife and kids, or husband and kids, but it certainly works at the coffee table at the house. And always have something in your head that you want to bring up, or have any of the magazines on the table: Firehouse, Fire Engineering, Fire Press, Emergency Equipment. They're all good, and go to any conference. FDIC, I think, is the best. Obviously, that's the one I highly recommend. But the regional ones are fantastic too, and there's a lot of great guys and gals out there sharing wonderful information. And everybody's worldview is a little different, because we were all raised in different homes with different moms and dads and different circumstances. So how we're going to approach stuff, it might be a little bit different. And to Ricky's point, firefighting is best it's done locally, right? Like, you may not have a lot of experience with grain bin rescues, but I'll tell you what, in Illinois and Kansas, they sure do, and they're experts at it. And dustbin, when those things burn, baby, watch out, right? Really, really interesting events. So that's not a big problem for folks in Prince George County or Washington, D.C. Obviously, the last grain silo in Washington, D.C. got dismantled when Lincoln was still president, for goodness sakes. So skill sets are going to vary, right? And regional groups are, and I think that's great. I think regionality is what made this country great, what makes the fire service great. And just because they do it differently than you doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. And so I think this is a great conversation. But when it comes to training, there's just no end. I mean, literally, there's no end. And it's the gift that really keeps on giving, because no matter what you train on, I guarantee, I don't pick the most obscure thing in the world that you could do with your crew. Within a week or a month, you're going to go on that call and you're going to be going, oh my God, it's just going to get better. And I hope everybody's safe, and you all are in my thoughts and prayers.
All right. Hey, thanks, Tony. Thanks for checking in today. We greatly appreciate it. Chief Schultz and Sammy, as always, thank you for all your time and all that you do for the fire service. And Kraut, he's busy vacationing, so he doesn't get a thank you. So he's having a good day at the beach. So thank you, and Tammy, thanks for hosting us all. We appreciate it.